In 1912, Dr. Alexander Chandler founded the city of Chandler after subdividing and selling off parts of his massive ranch property. His nationwide advertising campaign helped promote tremendous opportunities in the area, and before long, masses of people began to arrive. The community experienced an economic boom from the population growth, but the impact created many problems for Chandler. Town leaders had to deal with the minimal infrastructure in their struggle to provide services and facilities for increasing numbers of people. Demands on the Chandler Schoolhouse certainly presented challenges to early school board members. From day one, student attendance exceeded capacity. Board members succeeded in persuading voters to approve bonds for classroom construction, but their efforts always lagged behind demand. The initial flood of people immigrating to the Chandler area leveled off a bit in late 1914. Earlier that year, a bond election funded the completion of the school as originally designed. When school started in the fall, 3 new classrooms added to the 7 that already existed, plus the use of alternative spaces, proved sufficient for Superintendent Ella Page Seward to manage classes. In March of 1915, board member Frank Dana decided not to run for re-election. Dana had a fine record of service on the board. He did much of the legwork to establish the Chandler High School District, and he labored hard to annex 12 square miles to the district, which added a substantial amount to the tax base. In Dana's place, voters elected a well-known farmer named George Sturgeon. Sturgeon's campaign centered on 3 issues: hiring a male principal, employment of home teachers, and segregation of black and white children. Sturgeon's influence apparently started well before his official election, because in mid-April, at the very same board meeting in which he was sworn in, the trustees voted to replace Ella Page Seward with the male principal and superintendent. They gave the position to Lauren McFadden from Pierce, Arizona. McFadden was a highly respected educator and experienced superintendent. Board members also hired Merton Rice as assistant principal. Rice was a veteran teacher who was completing graduate work at the Tempe Normal School. In the summer of 1915, McFadden and Rice moved into town and began collaborating on how they could tailor the school curriculum to better serve the community's needs. Their first efforts resulted in an agriculture program being offered at the high school. Community members viewed this as a very progressive action by the new chief educators. In August, as their preparations were well underway, Trustee Edmund Larmer announced his resignation from the board. His departure prompted the town newspaper to publish a summary of his services to the community.
Mr. Larmer has been a hard-working trustee, and during his time in office aided in completing the 3rd unit to the local school. He was one of the first citizens of Chandler, the town's first pastor, and he played an important part in the building of the San Marcos Hotel.
County Superintendent John Riggins appointed local businessman Jesse Entricken to complete Larmer's 3-year term. Entricken was an experienced school board member, having held similar positions in Arkansas before moving to Chandler. In September, the school's 4th year of classes began. Student numbers were up a bit from the prior year, but attendance was manageable. From day one, McFadden and Rice immersed themselves in the daily operations of the school. Many of their efforts went into making the new agriculture program successful. At the same time, the 2 men organized student recess time and gave manual training students the job of building playground equipment. They encouraged extracurricular activities, with particular interest in the student-formed basketball and baseball teams and the debate club. In the spring of 1916, it was apparent that more classroom space would be needed before school started in the fall. The trustees took a proactive approach and planned a 3-classroom brick and stucco addition to the existing schoolhouse. The board used the existing tax levy to get the construction started, but later financed it through a bond election. Completion of the unit was expected by the September start of term. In March, school board trustee Will Robinson declined a 2nd term. In his place, the community elected Henry Peterson. He and his family were well known in the community, being active in civic, church, and school activities. Peterson was sworn into office in April of 1916. Then within a few months, trustee George Sturgeon resigned and left town. His successor, a man named Alva Morgaridge, was owner and proprietor of the Reliable Hardware store. Right about this same time, the board replaced Superintendent McFadden with his assistant, Merton Rice. Encouraged by his promotion, Rice started planning to expand school programs. He was the first to formalize Chandler High athletics with the intent of making it a respected contender in regional sports. He added a regular coach to his faculty, Philip Dunn of Minersville, Pennsylvania. Dunn also served as assistant principal and taught mathematics. Rice then took steps to create Chandler High's first marching band. Chandler School started its 5th year with a total of 13 classrooms plus rented spaces nearby. Student numbers were manageable and Mr. Rice had daily operations running smoothly. This allowed the trustees to finally spend some time planning a new high school building. The community's desire for a monumental high school structure came with an equally monumental price tag. Unfortunately, the tax base simply wasn't sufficient to supply the needed funding. The solution to the problem was obvious: increase the tax base by adding more territory to the district. The trustees had their eye on a large land area that included sections south of town, as well as the Tyler School District to the southeast. Merging school districts did require approval of voters in both areas. So the trustees made a plan and went to work to make it happen. In March 1917, well-known rancher John Anderson was elected to the school board, replacing the retiring Jesse Entrican. Anderson joined Henry Peterson and Alva Morgaridge in managing business and politics for both the elementary and high school districts. The three men would serve together for almost a decade. After 5 years, the district finally had some long-term stability in management. Good thing, too, because the next few years were going to be eventful. On April 6, 1917, the United States Congress declared war on Germany, and the country entered World War I. Many men were drafted and sent into battle. 18 to 20-year-old boys with enough credits to graduate from high school were ordered to register for the draft and enroll in colleges designated as student army training centers. The nation's all-out war effort consumed its natural, financial, and human resources. At home in Chandler, the community rallied to support the fight, yet maintained an interest in moving ahead with the high school. In mid-April, the County Board of Supervisors granted the trustees permission to annex 18 sections of land that laid to the south of existing boundaries. This substantially increased the tax base, which increased bonding capacity and brought the district a step closer to being able to fund the new high school. Classes let out for the summer in late May of 1917. The schools had enjoyed a very successful year. The basketball team had a winning season. The agriculture and domestic science programs were gaining respect and recognition. And school spirit was at an all-time high. The term ended with 513 students enrolled in Chandler schools, 50 of those in high school. The trustees authorized a 4th-year curriculum and a senior class for the fall. It was apparent that the schools were going to need more space and more teachers before the start of fall term. So began a busy summer. First, the trustees sought out new town locations where classes could be held. They leased and remodeled a boarding house near the school. They renewed a lease agreement with the Methodist Church for the use of Sunday school rooms and ordered the construction of a second temporary classroom building. In June, the trustees reported that they had been in negotiations with Dr. Chandler about a new location for the high school building. They were recommending a 10-acre plot of land located adjacent to the existing school grounds. Dr. Chandler discounted the original asking price of $24,000 to $16,000. Many people in town thought the land was too expensive even at the lower price, although most agreed the location was perfect. They voted to endorse a formal agreement with Dr. Chandler to purchase the property after the war. The new high school location was set. That summer, Superintendent Rice stayed in town instead of going back to his family home in Kansas. He had a couple of reasons for sticking around. First, he volunteered to lead the University of Arizona's agriculture clubs in the Chandler District. And Rice's second reason for staying in town was Miss Beulah Austin. Miss Austin was the first grade teacher at the school. She had resigned her post at the end of the school year to avoid controversy from being romantically involved with the superintendent. But she was adored by the townspeople and nearly immune to such treatment. In July of that summer, the trustees sent Mr. Rice to visit California. His mission was to look at some of that state's modern high schools and come back with ideas to develop Chandler's. Instead, upon his return, the United States government drafted him into the Army for service in the war. Rice was ordered to report in September before the beginning of the school year. But before he went, he married Miss Austin, and he set her up quite comfortably at his home in Chandler. The departure of Merton Rice left the trustees in a difficult position. The school year was only a few weeks away, and they had no school administrators. Assistant Superintendent Philip Dunn had telegraphed his resignation from his home in Pennsylvania. The board was in a bind and needed to act quickly. Now, right in the middle of all this activity, representatives from the Southwest Cotton Company first showed up to meet with the school trustees. Their visit was surely expected by the board members. Anticipation and excitement had been building since the prior fall about a huge agriculture development south of town. The Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company was behind the project. It was moving in to grow cotton under the name Southwest Cotton Company. What's the connection between cotton and rubber? Well, cotton fibers were used to strengthen Goodyear's rubber tires, which at the time helped keep the nation's war machine rolling along. The Cotton Company was building a town called Goodyear for its workers to live in, and it would be located within the district boundary. Company representatives were asking the trustees to build and operate a second grammar school in the new town. This request couldn't have come at a worse time for the district. The war effort was consuming financial and material resources across the country, and bond elections were suspended. So the board's ability to build a brick-and-mortar school at the time was non-existent. But the school board of trustees had a responsibility to provide public education to the children of Goodyear. If it failed, the Goodyear community could decide to sue for the establishment of its own school district. With bonding capacity for a new high school in jeopardy if that happened, the trustees became motivated negotiators. After a series of talks held over a period of 10 months, the groups reached an agreement in which the company would build the Goodyear School and the district would operate it. In early September of 1917, the next school year was fast approaching. With Superintendent Merton Rice drafted to fight in the war, the trustees needed a new chief administrator. So they dispatched John Anderson to Los Angeles on a recruiting mission. He found his man at a teacher's employment agency, and within a matter of days, Henry Keeley was in Chandler preparing for the fall term. That year, the specter of World War I haunted all people's lives in the country. At the school, students and teachers organized a war bond sales club that raised money for the fight. High school boys were required to drill with real weapons and in makeshift uniforms for 30 minutes every day. Patriotic assemblies were a regular occurrence. Life went on. 1917 turned into 1918 and the war continued. Russia surrendered. Germany advanced. Still no end in sight. As the end of the school year approached, anticipation began growing for perhaps what was the biggest event to have ever happened in the 6-year-old town. On Wednesday, May 29, 1918, at 9 o'clock in the evening, before a crowd of townspeople at the San Marcos Hotel, Superintendent Keeley and the trustees awarded diplomas to the very first graduates of Chandler High School. There were 3, Nora Chitwood, Ernest Koch Jr., and Bruce Robinson. The 1918 school year began, as usual, with record-breaking attendance at all grade levels. In all, about 600 students were attending the district schools in Chandler and Goodyear. Superintendent Keeley served as principal of the Chandler Elementary and High Schools, while 6th grade teacher Fred Curtis was transferred to the Goodyear School as principal. In 1918, the Spanish flu was spreading across the world. In October, the pandemic reached Arizona, and the state government declared a ban on all public and private gatherings. Special laws were passed, and all patriotic citizens were asked to enforce them. People were persuaded to wear masks in public, and coughing, sneezing, or spitting in public could land you in jail. Chandler movie theaters, churches, and schools were closed indefinitely. The school building itself was transformed into a hospital. Some historians credit the pandemic for bringing about a quick end to the war. The flu hit the German forces early, before anyone really realized the nature of the sickness. Regardless, Germany surrendered in November of 1918. The war was over, but any excitement was overshadowed by widespread illness. Chandler was spared from the brunt of the disease with about 100 cases and about 50 deaths, including one teacher, Miss Mary Corbell. Nationwide, 675,000 people died. The trustees were finally permitted to reopen the schools in late January of 1919. Superintendent Keeley then faced the challenge of making up for the loss of almost the entire fall term. He extended the spring term into June and held regular classes on Saturdays to make up the time. With the war over, the government released its hold on construction materials and financial resources. The trustees were finally able to release the call for bond election that had been delayed for nearly 2 years. On February 12, 1919, they made it official with an election notice in the newspaper. They asked for $125,000 to buy the reserved lots and build the new high school. On Saturday, March 15th, voters overwhelmingly approved the bond election to build Chandler High. The Chandler people were finally going to get the school building that they wanted and desperately needed. But they still had to endure a few more challenges. A month after the election, the trustees were notified by the Maricopa County Attorney that the school district's ballot issue had been illegal. The problem went back to 1914, when Chandler voters seceded from the Mesa High District and started a high school district of their own. The new district was organized as a distinct and independently governed unit from the Chandler Elementary District. The wording on the election ballot asked the taxpayers of Elementary District 57 to pay for land and construction for the new high school, which would be owned and operated by the Chandler High School District. The county attorney believed this conflict would have invalidated any bonds sold under authority of the election. The trustees wasted no time in calling for a second election. And this time there were 2 ballot measures. One for the high school district to buy land and construct the new high school. The second for Elementary District 57 to buy land for future primary schools. This election was held in May, and once again it passed with overwhelming support. A week later, 9 students graduated in the Chandler High School class of 1919, and the school year concluded. The trustees spent much of the summer finalizing design plans for the new high school. Building plans called for twin classroom wings with a central administration structure between them. The central building was also to house a large auditorium. In October, the board finally released a bid request to contractors for the construction of Chandler High School. Meanwhile, Superintendent Keeley and his staff prepared for the first day of classes. Keeley posted a notification to parents that he intended to strictly enforce the state's compulsory attendance law. Apparently, parents heeded the warning, because when school started, classrooms were again crowded beyond capacity. The trustees quickly secured additional Sunday school rooms in the Methodist Church and hired 2 new teachers. The school year was progressing smoothly despite crowded conditions. Then, in mid-December, the trustees received a shocking announcement. Superintendent Henry Keeley resigned. His wife was in poor health, and they intended to move back to California. The board appointed Goodyear principal Fred Curtis as interim superintendent for the remainder of the school year. This move gave the trustees time to launch a national search for someone highly qualified for the job. In early January 1920, the board excitedly opened construction bids for the high school. They had to reject them all. The costs were simply too high, in the $200,000 range. The district had $125,000 budgeted, but the post-war demand for building materials had driven prices way up. The trustees needed a new plan of action. The district had almost reached its bonding limit, so another election wasn't an option. But they couldn't delay construction any longer because the classroom shortage was critical and rental costs for additional spaces were taking a toll on the operating budget. They made a clever move and called for bids to erect only the classroom wings of the high school. This option got the cost down and expedited the construction of classrooms. They broke ground on the new high school on Saturday, March 20th, 1920. That spring, the district passed a couple of noteworthy milestones. First, district-wide student enrollment officially exceeded 1,000 for the first time. And second, University of Arizona inspectors placed Chandler High on the short list of Arizona's fully accredited high schools. This allowed graduates to be accepted to the state's public colleges without pre-admission testing. It also gave Chandler High a prestigious standing among public schools. This elite standing was surely an enticement for potential chief administrators. The trustees reviewed dozens of applications for the superintendency. In the end, one man stood out among the others, a man named Fred Austin. Professor Austin was superintendent of schools in Pendleton, Oregon when the board offered him the job. Austin was 42 years old and had been a superintendent for a total of 15 years, serving in Leadville and La Junta, Colorado, before Pendleton. Austin first visited Chandler in early July. After meeting community members and touring the district, he accepted the board's offer and returned to Oregon to prepare for the move. After his visit, a reporter's impression of the new school administrator was published in the paper.
Mr. Austin was a most personable gentleman to meet. He has a winning smile, an infectious laugh, and a most able manner. His past acquaintances tell us that he's an avid churchgoer and possesses a marvelous singing voice. He radiates enthusiasm and seems to have that happy ability of transmitting it to others, an element decidedly essential in the classroom. One leaves a personal contact feeling a sense of vigor and dynamic force, and Chandler people should be prepared to see a most auspicious era coming for our schools.
As the hunt for the new superintendent reached its resolution, a 3-year team effort by the trustees paid off. In a May election, voters of Chandler School District number 57 and Tyler School District number 70 approved a merger, forming Chandler School District number 80. Superintendent Austin and his family arrived in late August. Austin went right to work organizing school departments and assigning classrooms for the coming year. He added a chemistry course to the high school science curriculum and restructured the business program with new standards of achievement that students had to meet before earning credit. Austin has special plans for shorthand and typing students, requiring them to spend time practicing their skills working in his office. School started in September with classrooms filled beyond capacity, which had more or less become normal for Chandler schools. The new high school wings were taking shape, but they were still months away from completion. As the trustees reassessed the space management and attendance situation district-wide and searched for additional class space, Superintendent Austin reorganized the first grade into half-day sessions. He then worked with the trustees to call another bond election as soon as possible to finish the high school and add on to the elementary school. The merger with the Tyler district provided additional bonding capacity. On Election Day, voters overwhelmingly supported bond sales for $220,000. Unfortunately, it would take 6 months to authorize and sell the bonds, so there would be no timely relief for the crowded conditions at the school. Student attendance continued to increase. Teacher efficiency and the sanitary environment of classrooms were a problem. Austin and the trustees did their best to manage these issues while they anxiously watched the 2 Chandler High buildings take shape. Out of sheer desperation, they arranged with the contractor to make ground floor classrooms a priority so they could move into them as soon as they were finished. There were some legal and safety issues about occupying the buildings before they were complete. Fortunately, these little wrinkles were ironed out on the morning of Thursday, February 17th, and the high school staff and students moved into the finished spaces that afternoon. Vacated rooms were put to use right away. Austin transferred classes being held in other locations into the grammar school. Its classrooms were still beyond capacity, but at least the district could save some money on rent. In mid-May, bonds from the November election were finally sold, and the money started coming in. The board wasted no time in moving forward with its construction projects. It was hoped that a new grammar school addition could be erected over the summer. That same month, 13 students graduated in the Chandler High class of 1921. Shortly after the graduation ceremony, a contractor moved building materials onto the grammar school grounds, and construction began on a new addition. The new structure would add 4 classrooms to the school, which would then have a total of 19. With sufficient construction funds in the bank, the trustees ordered the completion of the high school administration building as originally planned. Construction started September 1st. The start of school was delayed 2 weeks in 1921 because of delinquent funding payments from the state. This gave builders extra time to put final touches on the new classroom addition. When school started on October 3rd, Chandler finally had sufficient accommodations for all its students on the school campuses. The school year was an exceptionally great one for Chandler schools. Students won awards for scholarship, music, and athletics, with state championships in public speaking and debate. The Military Cadet Corps received special commendation at the state level. And finally, after a lot of long, often frustrating years of waiting, Chandler High School was finished. The building was magnificent, a spectacular monument to the community's dedication to excellence in education. The Chandler High campus was dedicated on Wednesday, May 10, 1922. The ceremony took place in the school's auditorium. Dr. John Tigert, the United States Commissioner of Education, traveled from Washington, D.C. to deliver the keynote address. His speech emphasized the importance of helping students develop character and integrity in addition to knowledge. A few weeks later, on the evening of Friday, June 9th, a second ceremony was held. That night, the trustees handed out diplomas to 12 students graduating in the Chandler High School class of 1922. After it was over, school officially recessed for the summer, and the first decade of Chandler schools was history. It had been a period of opportunity, challenge, and accomplishment in which the district experienced many of the issues of growth in funding, quality of education, and social challenge that would resurface time and again over the many decades to come.